Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for coming out so early on a Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock. And I see a lot of enthusiasm in the room to talk about digital sovereignty. It is my great pleasure to today, before the French-German Summit hosted here in Berlin, to introduce this very special panel and roundtable of speakers here at the Hertie School. My name is Dani Stockman. I'm professor of digital governance here at the Hertie School, and I also have the privilege to serve as director of our Center for Digital Governance, where we aim to promote good governance of digital transformation all in Europe, but also across the globe. And so today, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you a very unique constellation of 5 members of pro-democratic groups here in European Parliament to present joint demands. And I'm going to give a very brief introduction to the speakers and then immediately turn over to 4 of them, 4 out of the 5, to lay out to us their vision for digital sovereignty, which is, in my view, very much needed here in Europe. So to my right is Matthias Ecke, who is a German politician from the Social Democratic Party, SPD, before he joined European Parliament, or also still, of course, in 2022. He is also an alumni of the Hertie School, where he received a master in public administration, and then he went on to work in the Saxon State Ministry for Economic Affairs. We also have Alexandra Gese with us. She is a digital expert of the Greens IFA group in European Parliament since 2019. She was a key negotiator of the Digital Services Act. She's also a co-founder of the Eurostack initiative, and more recently is very active on democratic shields. Thanks for joining us. We also have Michal Kobosko, who is, before joining the European Parliament, he was serving in Polish Parliament. He was also editor-in-chief in several media outlets, and he became the head of the Polish branch of the Atlantic Council. He's now very active on topics related to digital technology, energy, industry, foreign affairs, and security. Dr. Sergei Lagodinsky, to the very right, serves as vice president of the group of the Greens European Free Alliance in the European Parliament. He's responsible for foreign affairs and digital policy. He also acts as their spokesperson on transatlantic relations and Russia. And before joining European Parliament, he worked as an attorney and as a director at the Heinrich Böll Foundation. He also obtained his doctorate in law from Humboldt University. And last but not least, to my left is Axel Voss, who is a member of the European Parliament since 2009. So he has lots of experience. He worked on very important initiatives, including the Copyright Directive, GDPR, and the AI Act, among many others. He also studied law at the University of Trier, Freiburg, and Munich. And before joining European Parliament, he was a civil advisor at the EU Commission's representation in Germany. And he also worked for 9 years as a lecturer for European affairs at the Rhein-Ahr campus of the College of Koblenz. Thank you all for joining us. A very warm welcome to the Hertie School. So it is now my great pleasure to hand over the microphone to the first speaker. Dr. Lagodinsky is going to speak at the very end of the session, so we're only going to have four speakers. And who would like to get us started?
Maybe in the order of the...
Maybe Mr. Voss. Okay, perfect, yes.
Yeah. So thanks for the introduction and good morning to everyone. So as you all might know or feel, we are in an extreme situation in Europe with different challenges, and one of these is also digitalization. And therefore, if I may, we thought in the parliament, between all of our political groups of the political spectrum in the middle, to join and to join our forces in a way that we might go in the same direction, and that we have a kind of a fundament also in acting on these so-called democratic tech alliance. So I'm very much appreciating these, because we need now also join our forces as much as possible. And regarding the digitalization, I would say we need to reinvent ourselves somehow in Europe. And therefore, we should move away from this kind of being a digital colony for others to a kind of a true innovative and power, finally combining our strong regulatory tradition with a real digital industrial strategy. So from Eurostack and European cloud to a better use of Horizon and so on. So to stay competitive and sovereign, we need also to cut unilateral dependencies in key layers of the tech stack, for instance, by using procurement interoperability rules to shift demand towards European solutions and creating digital special economic zones. I would say the easiest way to cut bureaucracy and give innovators a kind of a fast-track approval and less rules.
Maybe turning on to Mr. Kubosko.
We're supposed to be very quick, as I understand. Hello, everyone, on this beautiful morning, early morning in Berlin. Great pleasure to be here with you ahead of the Franco-German Summit on digital sovereignty. We are here as representatives of very different political groups in the European Parliament. Those of you who are following the European Parliament know pretty well that we also differ a lot when we discuss, even though we are all representing the very pro-democratic, pro-European forces. Sometimes we do have differences, sometimes we do have a very long negotiations among ourselves. And that's not the only reason why we decided to sit down together this morning, to show that there are some issues which are very common, which are of our common interest, and we believe that this is absolutely one of the key crucial topic deciding about our future of Europe, future of our economy and our societies. So yes, me as a representative of the Liberal group in the European Parliament, the Renew Europe, I was more than happy to join this Democratic Tech Alliance, because I do believe that this is the issue where we need to find common solutions for all of us. Yes, we do not want to be a colony of anybody else coming from outside of Europe. We do have our national interests, obviously, and the member states differ as well as the political parties in the European Parliament do. But we have this feeling that it's now or never. When you read Draghi report, when you read letter report or publications, you find or you start realizing how much dependent we are today. If somebody says that we are dependent in 80%, in this strange mathematics, that reads to me like that we are dependent in 100% on other actors, other international players, and so we simply have to do something about it right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Ecke.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting us here to the Hendrik Enderlein Forum. I think it's a great honor also. I think we owe a lot to Hendrik, and he would probably be proud that we have a Franco-German European Tech Summit today. So what brought us together is urgency. It is urgent what we need to do together to overcome European tech dependence. What brings us, who is us? I mean, it's the pro-democratic groups that you see here in front on the podium, but it's more than that. It's civil society and it's businesses. This is very important about our Democratic Tech Alliance, that we discuss amongst businesses and civil society and us. And I think, to be honest, I think that civil society could have had a more prominent place on the digital summit that is going to follow today. Well, what we are going to do is, on the one hand, I think we have to defend and also develop further the regulation that we have on digital affairs in the European Union. We are proud that we have great consumer protection rights, data protection rights, but you cannot just regulate yourself out of dependence. You also need to build. So it is important that we invest also in hardware. Commonly, I talk about microelectronics, for example, coming from Silicon Saxony, from Dresden myself. I see how important it is to have this part of the stack. The CHIPS Act needs to be developed, but also the telecom sector, for example, we are working on a DNA, like Digital Networks Act, that we have more competitive and better equipped telecom sectors in Europe. But let me stress one thing in the last remark. We should not let this to those who call themselves patriots and sovereignists and so on, but are not in favor of European sovereignty, but rather represent the interests of American tech billionaires and other foreign autocrats. Thank you.
Mrs. Giese.
Yes, I can absolutely agree to that. Good morning to everybody. Thanks for being here this early in the morning. I think the colleagues already spoke a lot about the dependencies that we have and that we are trying to tackle. And I would like to speak about a couple of measures that we could actually do in the European Parliament, because it's true that we can't regulate our way out of it, but regulation is an important part of it. I was at a startup and scale-up and VC event last night, one of the side events, and nobody mentioned deregulation. What everybody mentioned was DMA enforcement. It was public procurement. You know, the US are heavily using public contracts to give steady demand to their tech companies, and this is what we are not doing. What are we using public procurement for? To give steady demand to US tech companies. Why don't we give that to European companies? And we really have to fight that narrative that you hear in politics. There are no European companies that can provide that service, and that is not true, and I'm seeing some in the room. Thanks for being here. And this is what we can do. In 2026, there will be a revision of the Public Procurement Directive, and following the pressure, I think, by European industry, but also the Eurostat initiative, the Commission President has already announced that there will be a buy European preference. And we need to make sure that that one really works. I think that is very, very important, creating a steady stream of demand, because in particular, that is what the cloud industry needs. It's not all about funding. There are areas that need funding, and we need to talk about that. But there are other areas of the digital stack, of the digital infrastructure, which is really the basis for what we are trying to do, that just need demand. And we shouldn't be spending taxpayers' money on American companies when it's not necessary. We have our own industry. Second point that we can do in Parliament is there's the upcoming Cloud and AI Development Act. The cloud sector is really the backbone of the digital industry. That is where data is not only stored, but also processed. So any kind of AI application, you need European cloud. And we do know that data on Chinese or US clouds is not safe. There is the US Cloud Act. There's no way we can regulate ourselves. There's no way that politicians can protect European data on a US cloud, even if it is in Germany, in France, or wherever. So we need to use the Cloud Act to define categories of data that are sensitive, that need to be stored by European cloud companies. And that is something we can do next year as early as possible, to make sure that also there is a steady demand for European industry, but also that health data of European citizens is safe. That the data, the German pension institution, for example, holds, that it is safe on a European cloud. And the third thing where we do need funding is social networks. We see how our democracy is being destroyed by the business model and by the direct political influence of American tech bros. So we need to build absolutely European platforms, European social networks, in order to have a place that is not driven by that kind of profit and that kind of political right-wing intention, to have our public debate in order to protect our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. I get the sense of urgency to act now, which brings all of you together. One of the criticism of this concept of digital sovereignty has been that the internet was, of course, founded as a global network that was transcending territorial boundaries and bringing people across the globe together. And this kind of criticism has also come from tech companies. We've had Nick Clegg joining us for a discussion on this panel a couple of years ago, when he was president of global affairs at Meta. not when he was a politician in British Parliament, but after he joined sort of the tech side. And so I would like to learn more about sort of why do you think the European model for digital governance should move more in the direction of digital sovereignty? And maybe I direct this question to Mr. Voss and also Mr. Kobosko, because you earlier in your remarks you emphasized urgency.
So the geopolitical situation has been totally changed. From my point of view, if we are looking now to the American president, he has a kind of an intention of just being dominant, influencing and cash orientated, and there are no values linked any longer. And this could be our way forward in providing to the world this link from values to technology. Secondly, a kind of a situation what I do or what I can't accept is to close an account of a judge or the prosecutor of the International Criminal Law Court. So this is also kind of a signal in signalizing us we have you in our hands. And this is something what gives you also a kind of a extreme motivation in saying we need to be sovereign, we need to have our, decide on our own destiny. Somehow it's a bit more complicated because we are so extreme dependent on everything. So now we need to think about how we can build a kind of an European stack or Euro stack and to get more sovereignty back.
Dependency was also emphasized by you, Mr. Kobosko. Would you like to add?
Yes, we are very much dependent. Everybody knows what kind of software we are using, what social services and networks we are using, and so on and so on. So that's pretty obvious, and we are using because it's convenient, it's comfortable. Everybody else is using that, and it's a very good thing. And you said that what was behind the creation of internet. Yes, that was a very basic rule, but still. There's a business side as well, and there are big money invested and big money being spent and earned by American companies in Europe. I mean, they have a full right of saying America first, but we shouldn't be, we should be brave enough to say perhaps Europe first. I mean, not using exactly the same language as they are using, the same rhetorics and the same narrative, but I should say, well, this is Europe, which matters to us most, and this is our economy. American companies have a full right to operate here, but they have to respect our law and our regulations. We had never a discussion of European companies in the States discussing whether they should really go along the American federal or state regulations. Why are we having that kind of a discussion under Trump about American companies in Europe? We do have our own regulations. We just expect respect on their side. On our side, we do have to, what my colleagues have been saying already, we have to support our own businesses, our own talents, initiatives, startups, allowing them, helping them to grow, to develop, not to start in Europe and immediately search for funding and for further development in Silicon Valley or other places in the US or elsewhere. This is our obligation as politicians. And this just has to happen now, otherwise it will be too late. Some say it's already too late. I do not believe so. We wouldn't be sitting here if we thought that it's too late. But it's our obligation, and this is how I see also my role, to work hard on securing the future, the digital future of Europe, being decided by ourselves and being supported by ourselves.
Can I just add
Exactly.
very briefly?
Actually, if you don't mind, I would turn to you now for a follow-up question, because you're very knowledgeable also about how this European model relates to foreign affairs, and so in the discussion about the emergence of a European approach towards digital governance, Europe is often compared to China and the United States. So this is happening in policy discourse. Emmanuel Macron used this comparison before. Our German Bundespräsident Frank-Walter Steinmeier used this term, but also scholars like Anu Bradford in her book, she also writes about these three different models. How, in your view, how would this European model, which is based on this understanding for you of digital sovereignty, how would it differ from the United States, but also from China?
Thank you. Very good question. Yes. Well, first of all, I would say that if we look at it globally, it's not so much, from my perspective, Europe first. It's democracy first. And this is something that actually Alexandra and myself and many of our colleagues have made a proposal on the global level. We also need an alliance of democratic tech countries. And this is not a new proposal. This is, in fact, a proposal that dates back to 2021 or 2020. And at that point, our American friends and American allies were considered part, and naturally considered part, of the democratic global bloc. Well, things change. And Nick Clegg was the first to go when Trump came to power. And as you know, Meta told him goodbye. So things are changing. And at this point, we do have a European democracy tech model, which is not about isolationism. It's not about anti-Americanism. There are plenty of American companies who are embracing AI Act, embracing our regulative support. And I think the difference here would be that democracy, sustainability, human centrism is made into a business model. We create an ecosystem in Europe, also through regulations, but also through our through the investment, through the procurement, hopefully very soon, where it is worth for businesses to develop and position themselves as someone who looks at the data protection, who looks at sustainability, who looks at democracy. And this should be the goal. And if it's not the case now, well, summits like this should work towards it. And to be honest, I was a little bit concerned yesterday, and I'm a little bit concerned about the summit, that the summit will become a deregulation summit. And this is not the point. The point here is how can we cooperate together to make regulations smarter, but to make them more democratic and to make this place attractive with our regulations and not without them.
That's a really great point, and in a moment I'm going to open up to the audience for questions, including, so obviously you can take up any points that have been mentioned, but especially this point about how should we go about this? Should it be more regulation, less regulation? I think it would be very interesting to hear from you. But before I open up the floor, very briefly, digital sovereignty in Europe, in your view, in one word and one sentence explaining why you choose that word. In 5 years from now, how do you envision digital sovereignty in Europe? Both Mr. Ecke and Mrs. Giese.
One word would be choice. I think we need to have a choice which services to use. We need to have competitive markets that are not monopolistic. We need to have secure data that is beyond the access of foreign governments. But basically, it's focused on businesses and consumers, that they have the choice and they have markets that they can enter.
Thank you. Mrs. Giese?
Yeah, I would also agree to that. If I have to choose just one word, I think it's still democracy, because that is choice, but it's also protection of minorities. It's also fundamental rights. It's not only the choice to choose the most convenient option that will create a market barrier for everybody else, and that would lead to a deterioration of democracy. I think democracy is really the first choice, and I think in a democratic environment, most companies can really thrive and prosper.
Thank you. I'm now opening up the floor for questions. Yes, please. Please introduce yourself. If you could state your name and your affiliation.
Sure. Christophe Lopez, founder of the media Euractiv, and currently leading Europe Media Lab, a think tank. Two questions, if I may. First of all, Alexandra Geze mentioned in the context of the Democracy Shield the need to also have European social media platforms. A number of actors, MEPs and civil society, etc., have pushed in that direction. There is something, page 19, well hidden. We hear that the Commission leadership was afraid of American reactions. What can we do about that in order to ermutigen, in order to encourage them to be bolder? Not necessarily with regulation, maybe soft law can help. And a question, if I may, to Matthias Ecke. We hear about this Democratic Tech Alliance. I attended a kind of organizational meeting in Brussels last week. What will you actually do? And you were saying that the summit is missing civil society. Will you include civil society in your works, and how? Thank you.
Yes.
So what we can do to encourage the Commission not to bend its knee to the US government, that is the question. I think speaking up about it, pointing it out. I mean, I think the Commission should be ashamed of how much they are not enforcing European legislation, of how little they are doing for sovereignty, of how afraid they are. So I think pushing the European Commission, having a lot of, speaking out publicly, but also pushing our governments, because I think it's not only the European Commission, the Commission presidents listens to what national governments say. So it's the Bundesregierung, since we are in Germany, it's the French government. Push European governments, have a public discourse, have a public debate on what kind of model of society do we want to have and what kind of digital infrastructure do we need to build in order to be able to still live like that. We need to have a much bigger public debate and really point out the massive lobbying going on in Berlin, in Paris, in Brussels by the big tech companies, which is very, very difficult to keep up for civil society, but also for European industry. I don't know how many times I'm in a room with top politicians and the 10-year American companies represented and no single European companies, no civil society organization. That needs to stop, and we really need public pressure from the bottom, from the broader public and from the European industry.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think this is an important point of the Democratic Tech Alliance, is that we are not only in Parliament, but also with civil society and with digital SMEs and so on. And one thing is that like every one of us, I think, is in a constant exchange, and we're having events, we're having like counseling meetings. But we discussed last week in Brussels that we also, when it comes to the actual files, when we really discuss laws, when we discuss the proposal of the Commission, that we need to reinforce the alliance and discuss it not only amongst like the shadows and so on, but also in the Democratic Tech Alliance with civil society and digital SMEs. And so this is when it comes down to us, that we really have during the negotiations constant exchange with civil society.
Next question. Yes, please. Please. Please state your name and affiliation.
Yeah, hi there. I'm Rowan Emsley. I'm representing the Centre for Future Generations. I'm also a fellow Hertie grad. So, there was some talk about choice and about the Eurostack. I'm curious what you all think. Which are the parts of the Eurostack that we need to focus on first and fastest?
So, who would like to take this question? We can't have everybody answer.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with the Eurostack, I mean, I love the idea. The problem, one of the problems with Eurostack is that you have to do everything at the same time. Even though, you know, it would be the smartest way, obviously, to choose priorities, because you have to start with something. But at the same time, all parts of the Eurostack idea, of the concept, needs to be done pretty simultaneously. And I would not start with the IT systems or IT solutions. I will start with something which is at the very, very bottom of the Eurostack, which is the energy and energy prices in Europe, and then the critical raw materials. We have a lot of discussion about there's no technology without the access to the critical raw materials, which happen to be coming mainly from China nowadays. And this is why it matters a lot. This week in Brussels, we have the Critical Raw Materials Week, discussing where in the world Europe should be searching for the raw materials, for the rare earths, and how to support the recycling also in Europe. So energy and critical raw materials, apart from all the IT solutions, matter a lot, and here we have to be really quick.
Mrs. Giese.
If I may, really quick, everything is important, I totally agree. My personal preference would be the cloud industry, because this is where the data processing happens, the basis for everything else, it's a backbone. And facts are being created very quickly right now. We're seeing these huge investments of American big tech companies in Europe, these huge data centers for AI, which will have an environmental impact, it will have an impact on the communities. So we need to make sure that the European cloud industry is playing that game, is increasing, and is not losing market share right now, but is able to increase its market share. So I think this is because it's so urgent. And the other one is European social networks, because if we lose public consent and if we keep being manipulated by Elon Musk, who makes some political opinions a lot bigger and creates a lot more reach than for others, our democracy is being manipulated, and we will not have the political consensus to do the rest.
Yes, please.
I'm allowed to add into this. So Daniel Lemmer here, ZF Group, and also representing Cyber Resilience Pact. Thank you. So one question from my side. I think you mentioned that deregulation is not the solution. I think we need to come to a joint regulation in Europe, to have not in Europe 27 regulations and another multiple set here in Germany in every state. We need to come to a joint approach for whole Europe in one voice. We need to split forces on the one hand side and to say, yeah, we need to tackle certain things. But I think also the data where we store it is very important, so we do not give our IP away. We invented something like 3G. We invented the ISDN, DSL, all those standards. And the foundation, we need to come back to this, but also protect our IP. And this is a very important point. And to a question to the panel then, how can we steer in the end this, that we join those forces which we have here in Europe, and also include all the different states to have a joint common thing without being manipulated, like you said, to just discuss and not come to an end. We need an operationalization. We need to bring something onto the street and put into action a solution that we say, this is our solution in Europe, and we're proud of it. And we use this first, something like this, and we need to have a different thought. We need to have a point in the future where we want to steer to consider where do we need as Europe to be in the near future, and to really focus on this goal and to steer to there as a joint and not fighting Europe inside.
Dr. Lagundinski.
A joint political will. I think this is important. A common digital market and a common capital market. So the banking union that we're talking about, the capital market that allows to mobilize and to dynamize European investors into European businesses, because you know why things are invented here and end up somewhere else, because after the scale-up phase, the latest, they are bought by someone else. So it's not just about digital regulations, it's about financial regulations, and it is also about market regulations, but it is about regulations. And that's why, Axel is sitting here, we're both in the Legal Affairs Committee. Why do we have to have 27 non-regulations on AI liability? Nobody knows what's going to happen if the self-driving cars are going to, I'm taking this stupid example, but it's like, it's going to run over one of us in a couple of years. And why? Because the Commission has withdrawn AI Liability Act that was actually needed in order to create one clear direction so that we understand. Regulations are not always bad. In fact, they actually bolster innovation and they bolster digitalization. So from that perspective, more smart regulations, but also a commission that also follows through with them and is not afraid of pressure from our American friends. And this is something that we have to tell them very clearly. And we say this in the Munich Security Conference, and when we go to Washington, you regulate on your territory, we regulate on our territory. That's what we are paid for. And we regulate not in the interest of the big tech, we regulate in the interest of our voters. This is what democracy is about in your country, hopefully, and in ours as well.
Mr. Voss.
Yeah. I'm deeply convinced that you're totally right, that we need to have joining forces in Europe, otherwise we won't achieve anything at all. So if we are just concentrating that, let's say, France will be better than Germany and Belgium better than Denmark or whatever, so then we are focusing on the third league and not the Champions League at the end. So that's why we need to focus a bit better. But therefore, of course, we need this political will. What I do not see right now in the member states, it might today be a kind of a first step in coming forward with this. We need also the kind of a new European strategy in this. We need new speed, new scale, new intensity to focus on resources and really to have the will in surviving digitally in Europe. And this is, it seems to be so complicated. At the end, we need political leadership, what I can't see right now. I hope I see this differently today, but I can't see it right now on the European level. And here, if we are missing something like this, we need to think more in management and not in new rules. And enforcing these what we have, but again, not complicating things. Now we need to start to build up our own European environment on digital issues.
Mm-hmm. Next question goes. Next question. Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you whether you think that we have the right institution. Thank you. I wanted to ask you whether you think we have the right institution at the European level to deliver on this. So first, I would like to congratulate you. I think it's really important. It's great to see this kind of cross-party alliance. But you know, because we know, I mean, often we know what to do, but my question is whether we have the right institution to deliver it. And for instance, do you think it needs to change in the parliament? Or for instance, the Commission, I think we should break up the Commission, because the Commission now has too many roles, and exactly what you mentioned, they bend to the American because maybe they are at the same time the regulator and the politician. So, you know, that's the first question. Do we have the right institution? And then a second and more a quicker question is, what is the cloud that the European Parliament is using? And do you think the European Parliament should change and indeed buy a European cloud if they are using a US cloud, which I don't know? Thank you.
Yeah, if I may, I definitely think that we have to work on the institutions. And on the one hand, you're right that there's sometimes a kind of a friction because of the multiple purposes that the Commission serves. On the other hand, we also see that the Commission is trapped in a game with the big tech, because they just simply cannot compete with the resources that the companies they actually want to regulate or do regulate have. So what big tech sometimes does is operating under like a strategic non-compliance. So they just comply to very, very little degree. They just, you know, they take the call. That's it. And the Commission is not staffed and not equipped with enough resources to really compete on that level. And in the same time, the political level, the Commission sometimes shies away from really imposing the fines, from really going after the companies that do not stick to our rules. So we've seen, for example, in the Digital Markets Act that we've only seen very, very little fines against infringements, which I think was like what Meta also earns in like 8 hours hours in a day, and so it's tiny. So what we really need to have is strong enforcement, and we actually probably also have to review our institutions for that.
If I may, I mean, you can always have the institutional debate around the European institutions, obviously, and we fought really for having an independent digital agency. When we worked on DSA and DMA, there was absolutely no political consensus. No other political group was supporting that, except from the Greens. I think now the thinking has changed, and we should have had it, but now it's too late. I don't think it makes sense now to start thinking about what kind of institutional changes do we need, because it takes, if everything goes well, it takes 10 years to implement them, and we don't have 10 years. I think the problem is not the structure of the Commission. I think the technical part of the Commission is working really well. DG Connect has absolutely great people, exceptional expertise. The problem is really at political level. There is no political will to fight against the Americans. And the Americans are fighting us very actively. They're blackmailing us. J.D. Vance, still even before they were elected, they said, if you enforce the DSA, we will withdraw our troops from NATO. In January, there was the communication from the White House that said, if you enforce DSA, if you put digital taxes, or if you enforce the fines, if our companies breach and violate your law, we will slap sanctions on you. Then in April, the visa restrictions, and they come back with it again and again, not to speak of the harassment campaigns of the Subcommittee of Government Weaponization, calling the DSA the Digital Censorship Act. I mean, it's really hostility. It's open hostile actions against the EU, and our political leadership should stand up against that. And that is true for the Commission President, but it's also true for national governments. So if your absolute highest priority is keeping the tariffs low at all costs, you can't enforce your legislation and you don't have sovereignty. But that's a political decision. It's not an institutional problem. On the cloud, I think there has a little success because the European Commission put out a tender and a definition what a sovereign cloud is and is looking for a new provider, and I hope the Parliament can. I think we're connected to the services of the European Commission, so maybe we'll actually see some positive developments there.
Yes, please.
Just briefly to add to this, I think the main point is that the priorities, the political priorities, are misplaced. And you will see this in the omnibus that is upcoming. That the slimming down or deregulating or debureaucratizing is being misrepresented as misunderstood by this Commission. And there we have a very clear call, and this call will be published in a couple of hours, is we want, I'm talking now, we the Greens, but I hope that the colleagues will support, is the European Digital Enforcement Agency. One agency for all the laws that we worked on, which are enforced, and this is a very helpful thing for many innovative companies, that they will know there is one phone number you can call if you have a question on how to implement and how to avoid some enforcement penalties, for example. This would be the biggest contribution, not GDPR opening or whatever is tried now. Just create this agency, create this phone number for the companies, and start enforcing what we have democratically decided all together.
This is also at the heart of our debate here at the Hertie School. I would encourage all the students to also raise questions on this, because we are also involved in helping or advising on building a digital ministry in Germany. So I think it is related to this question. Many students are involved. I'm opening up the floor to more questions. Yes, Marielle, can you please also introduce yourself and your affiliation?
Hi, I'm Marielle Du. I'm also at the Hertie School, but also at the Berlin Social Science Center. I have a question because it was already talked a lot about the omnibus now, and I have maybe a follow-up question regarding this, because today at the summit, actually, I think one of the first session is on the omnibus, and it is also about as a European pathway for competitiveness. And I'm always a bit, I feel like I get a sense that all of you see this quite critically, because I think some of you were already actually part of negotiating some of the things that were originally now being contested. So I was wondering what your opinion generally is on this, and I think there's also one supposed to be coming up for the AI Act, am I correct? And what can we expect for that? And for those of us concerned about the fundamental rights protections that might be thrown out of the window with this, that we're supposedly trying to protect with all of this in some way, what would you say?
Mr. Voss, and then Mr. Kubosko.
So, at first, when we had the election last year, 1.5 years ago, there was this intention in sending a quick signal to our businesses, companies, for competition reasons. And now we are ending up in a proceeding of omnibuses where we need 1.5, 2 years as a kind of a quick signal. This is already something what I have to criticize, and it's even not the full picture. We are just focusing on some elements, but not to have a kind of a full picture how to do business in Europe. On these omnibuses, we have two intentions. At first, we would like to align what might be different, has different options in some of these laws. And so we would align these. And secondly, there might be always something in it to reduce bureaucracy. So, and to find out and so on. Of course, if I'm looking to the GDPR, it was, from my point of view, a big mistake to leave all these interpretation of the provisions to the member states. And especially Germany is extremely hysterically doing on this interpretation. So that's why this could be a point in trying to come forward, and this is helping then also industry or businesses in having a kind of a better legal certainty. Also coming forward with one application in one member state should be enough for all the others. So this is also not the big change, but it's a change towards more business-friendly environment. And this would be something I would like to see integrated in also with business. We haven't had the time for the AI Act at the end to align this with the GDPR. Also here we need to find a kind of a solution that legal uncertainty is not still something what keeps business back.
Mr. Kubosko?
Yeah, just very briefly, yes. So we are expecting the digital omnibus to be released tomorrow, but we already know part of that, and we're going to be hearing to Vice President Virkkunen later today about the digital omnibus. Yes, we already have some concerns, and my political group already expressed concerns about the all issues related to the GDPR in what's going to be released in the digital omnibus. And this is one of the key issues here, because yes, we are to support the digital businesses of Europe and digital growth and development of Europe, while we cannot forget about the basic, very fundamental rights of our consumers, of our voters, of our citizens. So we have to be really very, very careful. Yes, there are bad and good lessons from the GDPR and its application across the member states, but we cannot just forget it. We cannot just jump to the area which is unknown and have this risk of really not protecting our citizens the way that I already used to be protected.
So we have time for one final question. Yes, please.
Thanks a lot. This is Hagen Echtzer from Attack in Norway. Some of you mentioned capital, and what I'm afraid of, what we're going to see in 5 years, is that we're going to shift power from Silicon Valley venture capital to maybe European venture capital. That the power goes from those who invested in Oracle and NVIDIA to those who invested in SAP. And I don't think that's a very nice perspective if we actually want to talk about democracy. So, in my opinion, democratic digital infrastructure has something to do with open source and civil society involvement. So my question would be, how do we actually change the economic model? How do we actually fund civil society engagement and open source?
Mr.
Well,
Ecke.
I think maybe we now have some maybe also some disagreements. First of all, I wouldn't mind to have a European venture capital to be stronger than it is today. So that's not my problem. On the other hand, of course, we also need public funding, and we have sources of public funding. And overall, I think open source is something that we need to support in terms of procurement. Also, with like on a more like on a lesser industrial scale, also with public funding. But in general, I think open source is a principle that not necessarily needs to be protected, because it is by itself an interesting business model. So I think we also have developed our principles here in the Tech Alliance on interoperability, on data protection, on sovereignty, and I think all these principles are supported by open source companies. So I think it's an integral part of what our vision is. But in the same time, I also think that we need to scale up a European private capital, because the investment needs in the digital transition are so huge that you cannot fund them with public funding alone.
I would like to thank the audience for these really great questions. We're coming towards the conclusion of our panel today. And I heard that there are some civil society supporters of the Democratic Tech Alliance here in the room. I think they're sitting in front. Sophie and Robin, before Dr. Lagodinsky takes us into the conclusion, or concluding statement, you get to share with us a little bit more why you are supportive of this initiative. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I'm
please introduce yourself, your affiliation as well.
Yeah,
that would be very helpful.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't know if I can do that. Hi. Thanks. I don't know if this works or this, maybe both. Yeah, so my name is Sophie Bloemen. I'm director of Commons Network, a think tank and collaboratory based in Amsterdam, working on new economy and democratic technology. And I'm part of the steering committee, and as one of the Democratic Tech Alliance, so not just the supporters, we are part of the Democratic Tech Alliance. And as one of the initiators, I'm very happy to see that we are so present here at the summit, where these voices are very needed, I think. A reason to start this alliance is really that we need that, as has been mentioned, everything is urgent, everything is important, and in these times of, as a colleague has coined, an authoritarian stack that is providing our infrastructures for our economy and society, it is time to coordinate and join forces around a democratic stack, democratic technology. And that's not just about buy Europe or have a European. It's really about the nature of the technology as well, because sovereignty is not just about nation state sovereignty, it's also about self-determination and how people have choice, as was mentioned, to change between technologies and to know what happens with their data and to shape their technology. So democratic technology is about democratic practice in technology, and it's at the very least about having technology that supports and protects our public interest and democratic values instead of undermining it. So that's why I think everything that was been said today is important, and we need this regulation as well to make sure that we have technology that serves us, not just European technologies, and at the same time build, and this also means building and investing and ensuring other business models and governance models that also keep the technology in Europe, so to say, and protect our citizens.
Thank you so much
for me.
Thank you.
I'll give the word to Robin.
If you don't mind, just to make sure that we finish on time, Dr. Lagodinsky gets the final word. Thank you.
You sure? Okay. I'll be super quick then.
Okay.
Thank you for your page. So hi, Robin Burgeon, Future of Technology Institute. I just wanted to compliment what Sophie just said. I think for me, what's particularly valuable in this alliance of, my favorite MEPs from multiple parties is the chance to develop actual strategy. And what I mean by strategy is really the art of creating power. Now, people just don't normally go about and say, like, we need more power, but we need more power. That is the problem we have today. That is, we have no power over our digital rules because we have no sovereignty. And if what comes out later today at the lesser interesting part of the summit is only, pumping a little bit of money into cloud and some announcement about speculative stuff around AI and quantum, then it'll be down to us, these people, to figure out the strategy so that we can develop sovereignty nevertheless. We have several active work items on this. One of them is Eurosky, that's tomorrow. But really, I think this alliance can persist and can deliver focused strategic thinking about bringing democracy to technology. And that, in my mind, is the most valuable thing. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. This is a big honor, and I will be brief. Oh, I have two now.
Stereo. This is how you like it, yeah?
Yes, thank you very much, and I'll be very brief because civil society should have a last word, and I think we agree with this. Number one, there is a lot to say in Omnibus, but maybe I will not use this final word for this. But one thing is for sure. This picture, plus civil society, is the best answer to what we saw with the Omnibus 1, what happened in the European Parliament. Democratic parties joining together, democratic pro-European parties joining together with civil society together, working on a democratic tech. And this is the best vision that we can imagine ourselves. If we are smart enough to be strategic, as you said, to have also a power to not to do everything at once, but also to have some strategic selection, as we started talking about that. What should be the main point we target, where we still have a chance and we still have the best way of doing. Number two, what I call strategic parallelism. Of course, we will not be able to get rid of all dependencies at once, but we should do both. We should regulate so that when we use someone else's technology, our data are safe, sustainability is safe, human rights are safe, and at the same time have a big development of our own European capabilities, and that is the second part of this equation. Only together this could work, but this can also work only if we are self-confident in our legislative ambition of regulating and investing and developing all together, and European first or second, but European and democratic number one. I think this we can all agree on. We're looking forward to this summit. We're looking forward to engaging and to hearing voices in the summit, also voices from civil society, also voices which also question maybe the general model of our society. I think this is about democracy, and this is about democracy and technology. Thank you very much. Looking forward to continuing the conversation.
I want to thank you all for coming out so early. I want to thank you for joining us today and presenting your ideas. And I encourage everybody to take on this discussion into the summit discussions today. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
And there is a website you can go to and you can get more information. And the website is?
Democratic.technology.
Thank you. Democratic.technology. You have all the information and contacts there. Have a good day.